Right, on the broadcast with me this evening is Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs Analyst, and Shahzeb Jilani, journalist from Karachi, is also joining us. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you both for making time for us here on WION. Shahzeb, to you first. Other than arrest, what, in your opinion, awaits Nawaz Sharif when he comes back to Pakistan tomorrow?
Well, it's an uncharted territory, because previously when he returned from exile, it was part of a deal with the then dictator General Musharraf that politicians will be allowed to contest elections. This time he is isolated politically. I am in Lahore, where police has put barricades. It is blocking roads leading to the airport. They've deployed thousands of policemen. Mr. Nawaz Sharif's supporters are converging in the city. They want to show their strength on the streets, but there's very little likelihood that he will be allowed out of the airport. It looks like he will be arrested on arrival, put in a helicopter, and taken to Islamabad.
All right, Sushant, going by that picture that Shahzeb has just painted for us about the streets of Lahore, the fact that 100 of the PML-N supporters have already been arrested as preemptive action in Lahore, don't you think this adds up to be, to Mr. Sharif's advantage? I mean, the optics are great. He's returning home, this embattled former Prime Minister whose wife is unwell and against whom he says a vendetta is being carried out by the establishment.
Yeah, I think you're right. If there is an overkill by the military establishment, and let's make no bones about it, this entire game is being orchestrated from the GHQ, and anybody who says otherwise is probably doesn't know what he's talking about. And given the fact that the GHQ has invested as much as they have in Imran Khan, or at least in putting down Nawaz Sharif, I would be extremely surprised if they allowed Nawaz Sharif to get away with this. So clearly they're going to come down on him like a ton of bricks, which means that he's taking a huge gamble. Now, the thing is that while, the media is muzzled anyways, for all its claims to being an independent media, the fact that the media is showing coverage which is being virtually censored and being dictated tells you a lot about what kind of an environment in which these elections are going to be held. But more importantly, I think if the people do come out, or if there is a heavy-handed crackdown by the military, then you enter as what Shahzeb calls uncharted territory, and you don't really know how it ultimately plays out, not just in the elections, but please remember that there is life beyond the elections. And for somebody like Imran Khan to run a country like Pakistan, which is restive, which is bubbling with fury over, the way he has won what he calls a fixed match, I don't think, you're looking at a very stable kind of a scenario, even if you manage to out Nawaz Sharif in the elections.
All right. We'll reconnect with Sushant in a second. Shahzeb, just to go off of what he said, though, I want to get to the bit about PTV deciding to black out any sort of interactions with convicted people on air. But before I get to that, I want to ask you, what is your opinion on these reports about the media crackdown? Is there a degree of self-censorship that's also going on, that you'd much rather keep yourself safe by not reporting certain things just in case it attracts the ire of people that you don't want focusing on you too much?
In Pakistan, we are talking about a creeping coup. It is obviously a slow process, but it is getting worse. The environment is of suffocation. Pakistani media has lots of news channels, but most of them have been brought under pressure to toe the line of the army and the intelligence agencies. There was one channel, Geo, which resisted, but it was also brought down to its knees, and it is now forced to give a lot of coverage to PTI, not cover certain topics, not have certain guests, so on and so forth. Dawn newspaper is also under a lot of pressure. Their circulation has been stopped in army-controlled areas, virtually in every city. Their distribution is facing problems. So there's an attempt to control the media, control the message. There's a lot of micromanagement virtually in every news channel or a newspaper which matters. So a lot of us feel that we are kind of going back to those days of martial law when you had to submit to censorship. And this cannot be good, because a lot of us believe that nations and the press rise and fall together.
Right, and I suppose what's more jarring in all of this is that you expect that under martial law, but when you claim to be a functioning democracy, to see something like this happen just makes it all seem rather fake. Stay with me, gentlemen. I just want to reiterate for our viewers that this is turning out to be rather an emotional homecoming for the Sharifs. Nawaz Sharif is leaving behind his critically ill wife in hospital and returning to face an administration that has blacked out his coverage on state TV and barred him from leaving the country once he is in. He's been put on the exit control list. Helicopters are on standby to take him to jail. And before setting off from London, Sharif hit out at the hidden hand responsible for his troubles.
ये क्या है, ये कहाँ कौन से इलेक्शन होने जा रहे हैं? ये सब कौम का मॉरल बहुत आता है। जो है वो कौन सी फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन होने जा रहे हैं, ये मेरे ख्याल तारीख की बदतरीन धांधली हो रही है। इससे पहले तो कभी किसी मार्शल लॉ के बाद कभी ऐसी धांधली नहीं थी। इस पैमाने ये तो सारी हदें बुलान गए हैं और बहुत ही मुल्क को मेरे ख्याल है कि किस मुश्किल में ये धकेलना चाहते हैं, लेकिन इसमें कोई शक नहीं कि पाकिस्तान के अवाम जो है वो बहुत इस वक्त जुर्रत का मुजाहरा कर रहे हैं और बहुत बहादुरी का मुजाहरा कर रहे हैं। मैं उनको अपना सलाम करना चाहता हूँ, उनके जज्बे को सलाम करना चाहता हूँ।
The Sharifs say they are aware of the reception that state agencies will provide to them in Pakistan.
देखें, पहले तो ये कोशिश हुई कि हमें यहीं पर रोका जाए। हमें बार बार ये मैसेजेस मिलते रहे हैं। जिस दिन से सज़ा सुनाई है उस दिन से ये मैसेजेस हमें मिलते रहे हैं कि आप वापस मत आएं और आपकी जो अपील है और जो आपकी बाद में वहाँ पर जो भी है उसको इट विल बी टेकन केयर ऑफ। तो जब हमने इनकार कर दिया तो उनकी कोशिश ये है कि कंफ्यूजिंग खबरें फैला के आवाम को ये बताया जाए, उनको कंफ्यूज किया जाए। लेकिन कितनी देर, इंशाल्लाह ताला अभी थोड़ी कुछ ही घंटों में हमारी फ्लाइट है, पहुंच जाएंगे पाकिस्तान इंशाल्लाह ताला।
Even as Nawaz Sharif's mother has issued an appeal to the people asking them to support him in this fight. In a video message, Shamim Akhtar said she too would go to jail if Nawaz Sharif, his daughter Maryam and her husband Captain Safdar are kept in jail.
मेरा बेटा कल अपने वतन जिसे उसने रोशन बनाया वापस आ रहा है ताकि मैं फिर से उसका माथा चूम सकूं। मेरे बेटे नवाज शरीफ, मरियम और सफदर के खिलाफ नाहक फैसला आया और मैं इन तीनों को जेल नहीं जाने दूं और अगर इनको जेल भेजा गया तो मैं भी साथ जेल जाऊं। मेरा ईमान है कि ये तीनों बेगुनाह हैं और अल्लाह ताला इनकी हिफाजत करेगा।
Sharif's brother Shehbaz is citing the example of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the change that he's bringing to argue for free and fair elections in Pakistan.
आज हिंदुस्तान अगर G20 में जाता है तो क्या मेरे दिल को तीर लगते हैं कि उसमें कौन सी वो जनाब कीमिया नुस्खा है हिंदुस्तान में कि मोदी जाके खड़ा होता है और हम खड़े तमाशा देख रहे हैं। This is not Qaid's Pakistan. This is not Iqbal's Pakistan. Let's convert this opportunity into making this as Iqbal and Qaid's Pakistan.
Right. Let me go back to my guess on that note. Sushant, I think the other interesting factor in all of this is that it's not just about one person and a crackdown on Nawaz Sharif alone. This is about an entire family, from Maryam to her husband. There is also, of course, the cases against Hassan and Hussein Nawaz. Do you think that that too is an interesting and compelling factor when we look at the number of players who are involved in the run-up to the election?
No, not really. I would say that it's about Nawaz, his heir apparent, which is his daughter. I don't think the two sons are really involved in that sense. Probably it's more of a pressure tactic, and you wanted to build up a case, so you've roped in the sons because many of the properties are actually in the son's name. But I think they're irrelevant to this. Maryam is being targeted simply because after Nawaz, she seems to be the vote getter, the person with the charisma, the person with the connect with the masses. Now, if you put Nawaz in jail but let go of Maryam, and she, goes on a whistle-stop tour, who knows what might happen. So you need to bottle her up as well. Plus, use her as a kind of a pressure tactic on Nawaz Sharif. Shahbaz, I think, also has a sword dangling over his head because there are these cases which are pending against him or which are at least being shown to be pending against him. And there are these veiled threats that once the election is over, those cases are going to be activated and Shahbaz might well be put in jail. Some of his very close bureaucrats are already in jail. So clearly, I think what they are trying to do is get rid of the Sharifs and probably keep PML-N with the N from Nawaz Sharif being replaced by the N from Nisar Ali, who was an old lieutenant of Nawaz Sharif but who is now estranged, but claims that he's fighting as an independent but is very much part of the party. So I think, and he's very close to the military establishment. So clearly something major and something very sinister is also underfoot. But Nawaz Sharif's charisma or his connect, I don't know how they're going to get over this. Now, the only point is that while he is breathing fire, when he comes back, will that fire lead to something more or will it lead to a damn squib? One. Number two, on election day, will his voter come out and cast vote in ever larger numbers and catapult him into power? Because if that happens, then, you are really looking at a completely altered scenario. If, for example, it's a very slim chance, but the PML-N actually wins this election or even comes out on top, then I think all bets are off, because then what does the military do? Do they do what they did in 1970, and do they tempt a fate worse than death? I don't know. I think you really entered really uncertain waters if that kind of a scenario was to unfold. On the other hand, if this election is stolen, then, like I said, there is another day after the election, and what happens on that very day is something which I think everybody should be scared about.
Okay, and that brings us back to the fact that this is quite a gamble. Shahzeb, are there indications, I mean, just going by the fact that PTV comes out with this decision just a day before Sharif's return, saying that you can't have convicted people on the air, does this seem to you as indication that there is genuine fear that Mr. Sharif is going to whip up the sympathy that's needed for his party, and the fact that he comes from the swing state, if you will, the state that sort of holds a sway when it comes to the elections, and that is Punjab?
I think it's a foregone conclusion that the army is absolutely determined to see the back of him. They are trying to stop his message getting out. But in the age of digital media and the internet, I mean, so what if PTV can't show his speeches? There are, dozens of other channels which they are trying to manage. But then you have social media, and you've got Twitter and Facebook. So message does get out. You have WhatsApp and so on and so forth. I should remember, on the face of it, this is all about corruption. But a lot of people in Pakistan, and I've been traveling in Balochistan, I've been to Faisalabad and Jung, and I've been talking to people. The most interesting thing is that for the first time, we are seeing Punjabi voters side with Nawaz Sharif, think of him as a victim, think of him as a target. And people are getting fed up now with this whole civil-military business that we've been through over the last 70 years. A lot of Punjabi voters who support Nawaz Sharif are asking, how is it that, in a country like Pakistan, not a single prime minister has been allowed to finish his tenure? Have all of them such terrible, corrupt thieves? That can't be. So people are now beginning to wonder, and they're beginning to ask questions about the military establishment. And that is, for me, the most important and most fascinating thing. It is still not very clear whether supporters of Nawaz Sharif will go to the extent of using their ballot, their democratic right to express their displeasure with the military establishment. Because Punjab is traditionally seen as siding with the powerful. And as soon as the voter realizes which way the wind is blowing, they have no problem switching sides. So the three smaller provinces of Pakistan are basically more or less sitting on the sidelines, looking at Punjab, fighting it out. Military, much of it comes from Punjab province. Nawaz Sharif's home turf is also Punjab. So this conflict, this fight for the future of Pakistan, whether it will be a democratic state or it will be a military-controlled national security state, is in a way at stake in this election.